Hi, very good morning to you. It's Jim from Avstar. I know I'm going to upset a few people with what I'm going to say in this video, but I don't really care. The intention is not to upset people, but merely to educate them and broaden their horizons to, situations which, if they're not already facing, they will do, without a doubt, at a later point in time. It won't be too long before, what this infection that's going round. I'm not talking about, an ordinary infection. I'm on about the mental infection that, our governments are portraying and, infecting everybody with, like this new woke society and, it's okay for our children to become or change their sex as and when they want, and then, they're supported by the state to do this, and then their children realise, after a few years of doing this, that it's not really what they wanted. It was maybe just a fad, and they was left with too much control to do what they wanted, and now they've ended up in a terrible situation. And we even hear the cases where they tried to commit suicide afterwards. It's that sort of infection I'm talking about. And what you got on your screen right now is well worth reading, because on the 10th of May 1933, university students in 34 university towns across Germany burned over 25,000 books. The works of Jewish authors like Albert Einstein, Sigmund Freud, went up in flames alongside blacklisted American authors such as Ernest Hemingway and Helen Keller, while students give the Nazi salute. Well, things have changed from them days, but they are still burning literature and information, only in a modern way. They call it shadow banning. And I've just got one thing to say about that. There is a company called Infinity 8 in Seattle, in Silicon Valley, which is responsible for most people feeling like on YouTube that they've been shadow banned. This actual company, believe it or not, pays contractors because they would no way get away with paying them what they do, because we're talking a wage salary which can fluctuate on a daily basis, which can pay anything from 10 cents to a couple of dollars an hour, depending on what they do. So you might have had your account tampered with on YouTube as a result from someone from Infinity 8, and they was paid 10 cents to do that. Nothing short of treason and treachery against your own kind. I can understand that these people need to earn, a salary, and that for a lot of single moms in the daytime, they can become a contractor for this company. But, to burn somebody's account when they knowingly know they're doing wrong for 10 cents is just despicable in my point of view. So it's not always the case that people are getting shadow banning. Yes, it is actually happening, shadow banning on YouTube without a doubt, and other social media sites. But don't forget, there is that company, Figure 8, in Seattle on Silicon Avenue or wherever it is, that are paying tens of thousands of people across the world. They can be in any country, and it can be from 10 cents to a couple of dollars at the best, and that really is a rarity from what I've worked out. There is a documentary on YouTube and you can find out that, and of course when I watched it, the penny dropped. So it doesn't matter anyhow. The point of doing this video is to remind you that things have changed since 1933. We use computers, but instead of them burning books and literature, which was the main way of communicating with people, theories and ideas, today we use social media websites and YouTube and Rumble and all the others. But the point is this, is that, when somebody doesn't like what you say, you get shadow banned. I was watching a guy yesterday who was talking about, the idea of leaving the United Kingdom because he was just absolutely sick and tired of the fact that he doesn't feel that anything is going to change. And I completely can associate with this guy and the way he's feeling, because it hasn't it has entered my mind on more than one occasion just to say fuck it and get all your stuff together, sell up what you've got and move to some other Asian country. that is in development still, a third world country. Because if this is a first world country in the United Kingdom right now, then all I see is nothing but slavery. And I'm not joking. Most people have the same complaint these days, and that is, after they've been paid their salary at the end of the month and paid the bills, there is nothing left. So they are literally working to survive instead of working to have some form of enjoyment. That's what our government have done, and they're paying no attention. And yes, 100%, we are being held ransom now for energy. I'm talking about electricity and gas. They haven't given us a ration book like I was watching on another YouTuber's channel talking about this. Of course they haven't given us a ration book, because if they give us a ration book and said we could only use this amount of electricity and gas, we would know that it was rationing. But what they did was put the prices up to a certain level, and as a result, we've rationed ourselves. It's like, we are frightened now to say certain things on YouTube. I mean, I could talk about, COVID, and, even though I'm qualified in biology to talk about, biology in that manner, virology and things like that, because we did similar experiments at university in any case, in Reading, I would be hit with a strike or a warning, or maybe even possibly banned. So we are using self-censorship now to self-sensitize ourselves. That's how bad it is. And that when you start doing this, that obviously there is a reason and a cause for it, and that's because you are frightened of the repercussions. Well, YouTube demonetized us a long time ago. And yes, we regularly have strikes and warnings. In fact, they don't even leave it 2 weeks now. As soon as our strikes are cleared and our account is clean again, we get another strike within 2 weeks. They just pick on a video that was done years and years ago and use that as the pretext and precursor to give us another strike. So, our channel is heavily, it's been heavily observed by, various interested entities that don't like what we say, because, we carry a certain element of credibility. After all, there isn't many qualified scientists talking about these issues like we do on this channel on YouTube that are, being penalised in the same manner. However, I do believe if there was, that would be the same case for them as well. So, even though most of our literature isn't in writing and in books these days, these bastard Nazis are at it again. Why do I say that? Well, if we can see people like Justin Trudeau, the Canadian president or prime minister, stand up and give a standing ovation to a bona fide and known Nazi, as well as all his other cabinet members, then, you have to ask questions. What is wrong with that picture that we are, openly seeing now, and it's not being covered up behind closed doors anymore? They're openly doing it, and then we got Davos, the end meetings and conclusions of these meetings is that at 2030, they're going to outroll all these different things. We know that biometrics are going to be coming into service at some point in the near future. And we know that the American dollar is in dire straits at the moment. The Americans cannot pay off their debt as it stands without anything being added to it. And as we, did the other day, show people that every year that debt will increase at a minimum of $3 trillion every year. At the same time, the BRICS nations are stepping away from the American dollar. They don't want it as the global reserve anymore, and they don't longer trust it because of what we have showed we will do. With the SWIFT system with regards to countries like Russia, and what we will do if they hold large sums of dollars in a reserve for their country. What we will do, basically what America and the rest of Europe did, was steal those funds and promise to give them to Ukraine to rebuild the damage that Russia had caused. But that is completely illegal to do, and it is, a punch below the belt for Russia. And, if you want trust and you want to show other countries around the world, that you are trustworthy, then that's certainly not the behaviour you want to be doing and showing other countries. And it's no wonder why, countries are stepping back and becoming, members of the BRICS nation of countries. And they are at some point going to bring out their own currency and use that as their own reserve. And there's nothing America can do about it. Nothing at all. We live in a time now where we see one world war after the next. And it's a constant breastfeeding of the industrial military complex. Nothing short. And when it comes down to human life, it is regardless. Bombs do kill people, and if you want to sell more bombs, then you've got to accept the possibility that you will kill more people. And what we've just witnessed in Gaza, and now we're going to witness in Lebanon, is the exact same thing of what we've been used to all this time. Just getting back to that point I raised about rationing electricity, and it is a reality, guys. There's a lot of extended conversations we could have on the back of this. Rationing is taking place with energy in this country, in the United Kingdom, and I'm sure it is in other countries around the world. It just isn't called that, but that is exactly what it is. If you outprice somebody for a resource such as energy, basically you are rationing them to what they can afford, so that they will spend whatever little money they have in reserves on that, if they want that little extra light on in the evening, or they want to run their fridge, at another extreme of this circumstance is if they want to drive an electric vehicle, at some point in the future, they're not going to be able to afford to charge that car up. And that might come as a surprise to you, because car manufacturers already have come to the conclusion that the second-hand value of these electric cars is dismal. And thirdly, they can't get enough subsidies off the governments to shift the amount of electric cars that have been built already. That's why if you go past the Bristol Channel, you will see car parks full of electric vehicles that haven't been sold yet, because the realisation of owning an electric vehicle is just a bad idea. If you are selling a second-hand electric vehicle, then the first thing that's going to come to someone's mind is, how good is the battery currently? And is it something I've got to replace in the short term of ownership of this vehicle? And that is what's killing the EV market at the moment, the resale value of their cars, because they know that, all the batteries that make up the battery pack on a Tesla are no different to some of the batteries that are in other appliances around your home. No different whatsoever. And you've seen how they've fared out over a period of, say, 5 years. So what must be the condition of a 5-year-old Tesla's battery? Would you say that there would be more than one of those cells in that battery pack that has deteriorated to the point of no longer being supportive to the rest of the batteries in that pack? And if that's the case, then it's a sign that the battery is on its way out, and not many people can afford £25,000 to replace the battery, because it'd probably be the same cost as what the car is. And that's why I won't buy an EV, because I know that the moment they brought out electric vehicles, it was a joke, and it still is a joke today. In fact, not even a joke today. It is a comedy show on 4 wheels. And that's why the EV market in this country is collapsing rapidly, and I dare say you may have noticed in your European countries and over in the States, the whole business of electric vehicles is just a complete and utter letdown. So my point is this, is that I was watching a video the other day, and a guy was just sick and tired of everything that this country has to offer, the UK. And he was actually in a better situation than a lot of us, because it's only Scotland and Wales that get free education when you're growing up. We don't get it here in England. Our government pays for the education of those in Scotland and in Wales, which is, unjust in my view. Talk about inequality. Talk about racism. Well, there it is, I think, in its entirety. and it's common understood form. You know, how can you allow Scottish people to have free education, the Welsh people to have free education, and not the English people? And yet it is our government that gives these fundings to these people, in these countries. Hey, don't get me wrong, you know, fair play to you if you're Scottish or Welsh, you know what, and you've benefited from free education, that's fine. But I didn't see any of you protesting on behalf of the English and the Irish so that they could enjoy the same thing. We are part of all the same continent, or the group of countries, Britain. But I didn't see anyone saying, hang on, it's not fair that we get it and others don't. No, because people never do that, do they? And that is probably the mentality that this guy had. Even though he was Scottish and he benefited from free education, it wasn't enough to keep him in Scotland. And within the next 2 weeks, he's going to be going to Asia. He'd already lived in Japan, I believe, for 9 years, and came back to the UK. And he said, you know, the weather's terrible. You know, we have a very long winter and it's miserable. The salary that he's on was about 19,800 for working in the banking sector. And, you know, he just said, you know, I think it was back in the 90s, I think, the average salary was 9,800. And it still hasn't changed to this point in time. And you would expect, I suppose, working in the banking sector to be paid more than £20,000, but it isn't the case. And he has said, you know, the majority of his earnings goes on tax and rent, and then there's very little for enjoyment afterwards. He said, but when he was in countries like Japan, the average meal would cost around about £8 to eat out, and that was with a drink. And the average meal here in the UK is about £50 with a drink, and the quality of that meal is just crap. You know, if you go around to these pubs, they're selling what you could cook better at home for that kind of money. And it's no wonder why people are, you know, turning away from going in these places, because they're overcharging for the prices of the food that they make, and it isn't very good quality. And, you know, why inconvenience yourself and be ripped off with when you're trying to protect every last coin in your pocket and sparingly use it for the right things. So, you know, I completely understand that. And, you know, I have even thought about leaving the country myself. It would be a big, scary move to do it, but it's not something that I would outrule doing perhaps in the next 3 years. I've got a mission to do something in the next 3 years, and then perhaps I might even consider doing that myself, because I'm just sick and tired of the same old nonsense. You know, I've watched politics in this country for 30 years and nothing has got better. In fact, it has persistently and constantly got worse over those 30 years. And now we have them coming out, you know, making their manifestos, and as soon as they get elected into power, they become the Prime Minister of the UK, talking about Keir Starmer, two-tier Keir, and he's got lots of nicknames already. You know, hundreds of thousands of people have asked him to go already. In fact, they was asking him to go within the first 60 days because he was already doing U-turns, massive U-turns on his promises in his manifesto. And, you know, one of those things was taking the heating allowance off the elderly people, you know, and disabled people in this country during a time when, you know, we have harsh winters. You know, and these people fall vulnerable when the temperatures get to a certain level. And he's just happy to take that off and accept the fact that, you know, over 5,000 to 10,000 people will die this year as a result of, you know, not having heat in their home. It's ridiculous, isn't it? You know, some things that are taken for granted in warmer climates around the world, in other places around the world. You know, yeah, you know, it's a critical thing for people that are ill and that need heat, and that haven't got, you know, a private pension to draw on, and therefore require, you know, the benefits and any thrifts that can come back off the government towards them, you know, and that they can utilise so that they can just do what? Survive. And he's turned his back on that, as well as lots of other things as well. So I completely understand why people are now considering the option of just moving out that country where they're just being used for the tax money, and the government is hoping that they'll die well before the pension or of age to claim the national pension. And that's really where we are. So I think I've covered all the points. Apart from one. About a year and a half ago, I brought to your attention a volcanic observatory that was monitoring the progression of this volcano that hadn't quite erupted at the time, yet the funding had been cut for the observatory. And it was there set up as an early warning system for the locals within the vicinity that would be put in harm's way should the volcano erupt. And the funding dried up for it, and the condition of the observatory just deteriorated to the point where no one was manning the equipment in the observatory anymore, keeping a watch. And of course the volcano erupted and several people did lose their life as a result of that. Yet there was no reason for those people to lose their lives other than the fact that it was short on funding and wasn't kept up to date. And the reason why I mention that is because that's our observatory. Our observatory is slowly deteriorating. I'll keep telling people that, unless we get secure a bit more funding for the observatory, the same thing is going to happen to us. When a time of crisis really comes, we're not going to have any working equipment here. We are lucky to have, at this moment, the Trimag and the muon detector here in the UK and the magnetometer working. And we've got one muon detector and one magnetometer working. And we regularly receive the data from Canada, Kendall, one of our superstars. But we had one in Arizona, we had one in Kentucky, we had two in Australia, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, we had one in Hong Kong. But we're back down to just the UK and Canada right now. And the way things are going, I can't afford to give my full time to this anymore now. I've started to source training for another job, which will be kicking in the next 2 months. So I'll be slowly moving away from the observatory because simply, I've got to find a source of funding for myself, because just like you guys, I live in a monetary system, and without money, I can't participate in that system, unfortunately. So, that's where we stand. We do have 60,000 subscribers. However, I've always said, you've got as many as what the last person or the last people watched your video. So we've probably got a couple of thousand. But even so, a couple of thousand of you could chip in and keep this observatory going. And if that moment ever come where the alarm bell needs to be rang and you need to be notified of severe changes, it could still take place. But the way things are at the moment, and the way they've been going for the last year and a half, or at least since last October, it just means that that isn't the case, and it isn't guaranteed anymore. And it is uncharted territory that we're in right now. I would have loved to continue putting these magnetometers out there, because the more information that you gather from lots of different positions around this world gives you a better idea as to what's going on with the intensity of the magnetosphere, which is really the critical thing for us that we should be paying attention to. But because we can't even raise enough to keep half a salary in place, we stand to lose everything. It's incredible. Unless things change in the near future, then it will continue to deteriorate, this observatory will. And I cannot keep putting my own hand in my pocket, or I can't keep going to those same people every time that occasionally chip in a couple of £100 saying we're out of money again, because it's just unfair to put the burden down on just a few people. If we collectively work together, we can resolve things. Or the only other alternative is get what I've got to get done, maybe in 2 or 3 years, just clear off out of the UK and put this observatory behind me. I was willing to continue with it, and I still am at this point, but unless things really change, and they've got to really change, it means more than just listening to these videos. It means participating in a little bit of funding and support. But unless that happens, we could be in that same situation that those people was that lived in the vicinity of that volcano, that there was the facilities and equipment there, just needed to be maintained, and a couple of people paid to monitor it could have saved the lives of those people who perished when that volcano erupted. Same story here, only it won't be a localised event like a volcano, just affecting the local people. We're talking about a global event here. When we're talking about the magnetic pole reversal, it is a global event, and there is only one magnetosphere, and that is the magnetosphere that will be affected during the next reversal. So, you know, you have a trusted observatory. It just needs to be maintained and funded. So with that, guys, I'll leave it there. You know, there is a link down there in the description. What do I have to say to get it through to people? You know, to get them to understand that, you know, that's the way it is. Anyway, you know, the only other thing for me to say is you take care of your loved ones as best you can. And you know what? We are approaching times where we need to be as shrewd as the fox, as they say. So I'll say what you should do. Bye for now.